Good evening and welcome to Mindset, mental health news and information. I'm your host, James Curtis. On today's show, we're going to be talking about the idea of stigma. Stigma, based on all the conversations I had with some truly phenomenal, impressive people that are doing some great work in the area of fighting mental health stigma. One thing is clear, it doesn't seem to matter where you are, how old you are, what part of the world that you are in. Stigma issues and the idea of fighting through what we've learned growing up, all of the things that we see and hear around us that keep us from taking advantage of the resources that are available. It's pretty much the same. It's consistent, and sometimes it can indeed be overwhelming. We're going to go sort of around the globe. Not really, but bear with me. Give me the benefit of the around the globe reference. I'm going to start off talking to a journalist in Australia. Her name is Juliet Sally. She has been traditionally a business reporter. She's a freelance reporter and journalist based out of Sydney, Australia. And she approaches the idea of mental health stigma from the standpoint of business. And she authored an article that you can find at our website, at our Facebook page, rather, facebook.com/mindset show page, that talked about the incredible cost to the country of Australia and to the businesses there of mental health and people going through issues and not being able to deal with them as well as they might otherwise. And she talks a little bit about her situation as well. Then we go over to a snippet of a report that I lifted from National Public Radio. Again, you can find the complete report on our website and at the Mindset Report about individuals dealing again with the same issues of stigma in a war zone, specifically out of Iraq. And then we come back home and I get a chance to talk to some high schoolers in a Southern California school in Riverside County about how they're talking to their peers or how those high school students are being helped with the idea of stigma by individuals who are their peers. But before we get to all that, a few stories from around the news. You can find any reports that we talk about, and all the reports that we talk about here on Mindset, on the Mindset Report, our newly minted source for mental health news and information. You can find that at mindsetreport.com. If you've been following the news, you know that the so-called American Sniper trial has ended with a guilty verdict for the individual who was held responsible for the murders of two individuals, Chris Kyle being the one that's known to most folks based on the movie American Sniper. He was found guilty even though he mounted the insanity plea. It was not successful for him. And from the Christian Science Monitor, exercise may not just alleviate depression, but indeed it may prevent it. The idea that doing exercise on a regular basis is one of the best non-invasive ways to curb and stave off the idea of depression. And finally, on the tech side of things, there is a video feature in your smartphone, on the iPhone and in the Android. This from New York Times. These smartphones have apps that help you with meditation and calming. And just when you thought that smartphones were just a distraction, here they are helping. We're going to get to our main topic, which is dealing with stigma from different parts of the world, different age groups. All that when we return in about a minute. You're listening to Mindset, Mental Health News and Information. I am your host, James Curtis. On today's show, again, we're talking about our main topic of stigma. I had conversations with some really phenomenal folks. The first interview you're going to hear is with an Australian journalist. Her name is Juliet Sally. She is a freelance broadcaster and journalist in Australia. She did a really wonderful article. You can find that again on our Facebook page, facebook.com/mindset show page. You can read the complete story there. Juliet Sally, a phenomenal individual, has a great perspectives and gives us some insight on some things that are the same and some things that are different from the Australian perspective. All right, let's try that one more time.
I'm Juliet Sally, and I'm an Australian journalist based in Sydney, finance reporter for close to a decade, but I also have strong interests in other issues like fertility, mental health, equality. So I've been working for a number of publications and networks here in Australia, doing articles and stories on those issues.
How does the average person, based on your experience in Australia, view just the idea of going to see a counselor, going to a therapist, just for day-to-day issues that might occur in anyone's life?
Absolutely, and I think that's where the problem lies, because I think for a lot of Australians, and we see this with high suicide rates in the country, for example, there is very much this stigma that you're not strong if you admit to having a mental health problem. The person that I interviewed for the article that I wrote, he had suffered from bipolar, and very high-profile Australian television executive, and had to leave his job. And
this is Adam Boland.
Adam Boland, yes. Mm-hmm. And he said to me, and I really like this quote, he was basically saying, you know, if you have a broken leg, it's treated in the workplace. People are sympathetic and empathetic around you. But a lot of people hide their mental illness for fear of being held back, or for fear that they're being perceived as weak. There are obviously a lot of people that are actually diagnosed with bipolar, which is just as valid a disease as diabetes or any other illness that a worker might have. But a lot of people have this stigma that, you know, shake it off, there's nothing wrong with you, get going. When I had my reactive depression, which was as a result of something personal, which happens to all of us in life. You know, you can have the death of somebody close to you. You can have, a traumatic event that happened to you, which is what happened to me. And I was fortunate that I worked for a corporation that offered counselling, but I also was, I guess, I don't know if brave is the right word, but vocal enough to go to my manager and say, I'm not coping. And to, you know, for the benefit of my company, or the I guess to say how great my company was at that stage, they actually said, look, take a week off, take a week of unpaid leave, deal with what you need to, see a counsellor. And then I continued to see a counsellor. And you know, the Australian government has a very great healthcare system where you can actually get a lot of counselling sessions for free or partially paid by the Medicare system. And I think if there's a lot more awareness about things like that in developed countries, not just Australia, but of course the States as well, then perhaps people might be a little bit more inclined to put their hand up and say, I do need some help. But yes, in terms of those people that might not be able to afford a counsellor, or might not think that they can afford a counsellor, or have access to one, it is a really worrying concern that people are just hiding behind their illness and pretending everything's okay. And then you see these really dramatic instances where people actually do take it to the extreme of either committing suicide, or they have a stress-related heart attack. And I've seen that happen in the corporate world as well.
Is it your sense, Juliet, that Australians are more open to seeking out mental health services for the day-to-day type of just regular life stressors? There are deaths, there are work aggravations, there are divorces, there's workplace anxiety.
Look, I think you probably can't generalise, but if I was to generalise, I would probably say no. I think the Australian attitude is really kind of, she'll be right, mate, and, you know, really kind of we're too strong to admit to this, particularly with men, I think, and particularly with men of the generation perhaps 15, 20 years older than me or my parents' generation. There is that real kind of stigma around mental health, or that, you know, the people that have mental health or say that they have mental health issues are weak. And I think that's really concerning, because I look back at things that have happened in my family line and other people's family lines when you talk about grandparents or things that have happened in families, and you think, gosh, they probably did have an undiagnosed mental health issue, but instead they turned to alcohol, or obviously you always hear stories about people turning to domestic violence or things like that to deal with what's going on in their head. I think this generation is better at saying, look, something's not right, I need to get this sorted out, I need to go to the doctor. But as a whole, absolutely not. I've worked in the corporate environment, and I think there is still very much a stigma if you admit to not coping, that people think, oh, well, we won't promote this girl or this guy because they're a bit unstable, as opposed to actually acknowledging that all of us at some point in our lives do suffer the ups and downs of life, and sometimes you just need to take, as we say, a mental health day to either deal with it or to actually go and see a doctor. And I think the great thing about living in this century is that there is medication to help people go through these hard times, or if they're bipolar or have a mental illness that is going to be with them for life, then yes, they should be seeking out medical help. But I'm not entirely sure that everybody does do that or think that it's a good idea. I think a lot of people hide behind it and are a bit too scared to come out and say that they're not coping.
You're currently a freelance reporter. You've worked for over a decade in the news industry, so that has brought you a lot of information from a lot of different places around the world. Do you think that that contributed to your own disposition to say, hey, let me go get some help?
You know, I think I was just really fortunate that I have a really fantastic family and a great group of close friends, and I was talking to them about it, and they said, look, we can talk to you till the cows come home, but, you know, maybe you need to see someone about this. So I did, and honestly, taking that first step was the best thing that I ever did. I went and saw a doctor. I got referred to a counsellor, which was basically completely paid for by the government, because I was diagnosed with reactive depression, which means that, you know, you have answered enough questions where they, I guess, are a little bit worried about your state of mind. And it was probably for me a 6 to 9 month process where I just went and saw the counsellor regularly. I still talk to my close friends and family, and I guess I chose happiness. And I think that's another thing that I've really found in this last, 9 months or so where I have been freelance, where you can choose a life that you want to live that's going to make you a lot happier. Happiness and mental health is so much more important than just trying to cope and just trying to think that you need to be doing what the person next to you is doing, or you need to have hit a specific goal by a certain time. So I guess all of that, and being a journalist and having studied a lot of stories and studied a lot into mental health was what sort of got me through it as well.
Again, if you're just tuning in, my guest is Juliet Sali. Am I saying your name right, Juliet Sali?
Yeah, pretty much. I always say Sali rhymes with barley.
Okay, and that's very helpful to me. I appreciate
it helps
that.
In broadcast, yeah.
There you go. My guest is Juliet Sali. She's a freelance journalist based in Sydney, Australia. The story that you worked on that I read cited, I believe, 1 in 5 individuals has a mental health issue that's serious enough to be diagnosed or to be considered a mental illness. And depending on the statistic that you read about the United States, it's either 1 in 4 or 1 in 5. With that, who or what organizations or individuals are primarily responsible in Australia for really trying to fight the stigma and break down those barriers?
There's charities, and there's also definitely a big government effort. I think it's getting more and more attention, which is fantastic to see. I think the stigma that mental health is something you can snap out of is slowly starting to diminish. So there has been a government group set up called the Mentally Healthy Workplace Alliance, and they're working with businesses. They've actually created a company called headsup.org.au, and businesses can register there to get what they call a mental health work kit. So they're virtually saying that every time a company invests in mental health, be that by offering counselling counselling to their employees that may not think that they can afford it or may not necessarily seek it out, or also just offering mental health first aid, I guess mental health checks of their employees, making sure that people go home on time, that they have a good work-life balance and that they're physically healthy. Virtually, this research from this organisation, headsup.org.au, has indicated that every dollar businesses invest in this program, they're going to get $2.30 return from their employees, because that means their employees are more likely to say, hey, I might have a problem, I need to go see a counsellor, I'll go in my lunch break. Then they're more inclined to come back and maybe feel a bit better about their work day, go home on time, get that work-life balance, and in the end, their productivity and reduced absenteeism is really going to help the business, the economy, and that individual. So there are certainly a lot of organisations working together. There's also Beyond Blue, and the Black Dog Institute, which are both charities working with mental health, and also we have a day called Are You OK Day, which is held in September each year, and that's gaining more traction every year. It's basically an annual day where you're just encouraged to ask someone, are you okay? And they're virtually saying just by starting that conversation, which we should be having with people every day, not just on this specific day each year, a conversation can save a life. So that organisation in particular is really trying to reduce suicide rates in Australia.
That's amazing. And I have a confession, Juliet. I just now got Are You OK Day. I was looking at that. I saw those initials in the article, and I'm thinking, what does that stand for? And right when you...
Australians love acronyms. So, we're huge on acronyms. I remember travelling through the States the first time about 15 years ago and shortening everybody's name that I came across, and we call afternoon Arvo. And, so we're really big on acronyms. We're really big on shortening things. But, yes, the Are You OK is the letters Are You OK, and that stands for just checking in with someone and making sure that they are okay. Just the more conversations that are had about this sort of thing, and the more times that articles are shared or interviews about mental health are shared is really important, because I think all of us at one point in our life, that 1 in 5 number that we have here in Australia and the 1 in 4 you stated in the US, that's just people that have admitted that they have mental health issues. So you've got to think there's probably a lot of people walking around pretending everything's okay as well, and there's almost that scary thought of it's the quiet ones, the ones that you thought had the perfect lives, and then you find out that, they're the ones that have committed suicide, or they're the ones that have had something terrible happen to them. So the more conversations I think that we can have, the more that everyone can feel that it's part of life to have ups and downs, and to feel down about certain things that happen in your life. It's normal, but we do have help, and I'm a huge believer in talking to people, in counselling, and if needed in getting medication, because we'll take a pill for a headache, but why won't we take a pill when our head is actually inside is hurting as well?
One last point, Juliet. In the piece that you wrote, you quote an individual, Professor Tony LaMontagne out of Deakin University there in Australia, and he's a researcher who deals with workplace conditions. Talk to us about what he described.
Yeah, so he actually did an interview with the ABC last week, our national public broadcaster, and he was virtually saying that across the board mental health is now the number one reason that people call in sick and don't come to work.
The number one reason. I don't know what the stats are here for us in the United States, but certainly a lot of people can identify with that. You're out of it. You've had a traumatic experience. Something's going on with your family. Something's going on personally. Something's happening with a child, a parent, etc. And you get overwhelmed, and mental health doesn't qualify as that sick day. So you just tell them that you're sick. We move from Australia to Iraq. Again, this is a story I picked up from National Public Radio, the entirety of this story. I'm just going to play a snippet of it here for a couple of reasons. One, time. Two, it's very, in its entirety, graphic. There's not a lot of graphic elements here. There are some. It's a very short snippet, but the idea of stigma still is active, even there in a war zone.
من الناحية الروحية يعني تأثرت ويوميا قاعدة بس أبكي.
The pain inside of me is so deep, she says. I just cry every day. ISIS kidnapped this woman's adult son in June, and she doesn't know his fate. Her husband expresses the loss in more destructive ways. I've become mentally ill, he says. When my wife tries to talk to me, I just lash out. I hit her. Dr. Omid Khader Taha is one of the psychiatrists here. He says he also has to tackle the stigma that goes along with mental health problems here.
Because they cannot express, sometimes they perceive that as just a kind of weakness.
Just kind of weakness. How many times have you heard it? How many people have said it? How many times have we even said it to ourselves? You're listening to Mindset, Mental Health News and Information. I'm your host, James Curtis. One quick shout out. There is an incredible site, and you're going to hear some more about this site on future programs, mantherapy.org, mantherapy.org. Not just for men, but if you know a guy, you have a man in your life, or indeed you are a man, please go check it out. We come back to how high schoolers deal with, or rather how stigma and the idea of fighting stigma is dealt with on the high school level. I ended up out at a high school in Southern California here in Riverside County, had a great conversation with a table of peer supporters that were there to talk to the high school students. Here's some of that interview.
Because I don't look, my student days are a little faster.
Hi, I'm Kristen.
Kristen, I'm James Curtis.
Nice to meet you. Hey, James, my name's Lene.
Hi, Lene, I'm James Curtis.
Hi, James.
And your name? Julio.
Kristen, Lene, and Julio. Julio and Lene are indeed this peer workers who are college students. They are the ones who talk to the high school students. Kristen is the coordinator, the administrator over the program. And Julio and Lene, a little reluctant at first to talk, so I tried to loosen them up a bit, and that's how we started our conversation.
If I was to come up to you as a student, give me the spiel. What's going to happen?
Well, Cup of Happy is a group primarily based around stigma reduction. We play tons of different activities, such as the one we're going to play today. And we ask questions about mental health related subjects, such as talking about different mental illnesses, like what is bipolar, what is schizophrenia, what does someone who has those mental illnesses go through on a daily basis. We even talk about things as simple as stress and depression, how to get through those tough transitions in life, because we all experience it, and it's just good for them, the students, to know that they are not alone, and everyone goes through it, and we provide a positive outlet for them to talk, kind of get in contact and network with different people, maybe to help them out, different stuff like that.
All right.
Also, we're peers, so we're around their age range, so it's
you guys look like you're 30. I'm kidding. Okay,
so we're around their age range. So they could be more comfortable talking about maybe stress that you're going through, or maybe they're going through a mental health challenge. So it's easier for them to be able to open up to us.
Tell me about the games and just give me a little. How's that work? You pick up a die, and then what happens?
Okay, so this is stick it to pick it. They roll dice, and either it gets 1 through 6. 1 being multiple choice, 2 true or false, 3 celebrities. 4 fill in the blank, 5 in your opinion, 6 wild card. A wild card meaning we get to choose whatever the 1 through 5. And we talk about different things from coping skills to stress.
Let me do it.
So let me set the scene here. This is a regular conference room table in the middle of the quad, the middle of the school, with this really incredibly bright green tablecloth on it. And these two young people are standing there with a big jar of candy and some signs, and there's nothing else around, nothing else going on, so they're sort of the center of attention.
Okay, roll on 1. What does that do?
Okay, so I have to ask you a multiple choice.
Okay. All right.
Approximately how many college students commit suicide every year? A, 900, B, 1,100, C, 4,000, or D, 50?
And then we put a star next to your name, and and we always
have... Like candy?
Yeah, you can have one. We always keep incentives.
You're not going to do that.
These are fruit snacks, and there's lollipops.
Okay, I'll do the fruit snack.
Then wheat
you can have enough?
Yeah, absolutely.
You sure?
We always have enough.
This is cool.
Yeah,
So how does it usually go? They come up, they roll. Does the conversation typically ensue after that? Do they usually talk to you guys? They're like, okay, I'm done with you, and
when we first started coming here, usually the color catches the attention.
Yeah.
They see that we have a bucket of candy, and they'll come up and ask, hey, what is this? Why are you here? And then we'll tell them. We play a game. We've been here for quite a while now, since the beginning of the school year, so a lot of the kids will always come back and say, hey guys, what's up? And then they're like, what are we doing today? And they'll sign in. We don't even need to tell them to sign in. We'll be like, okay, remember, we do this and this and this. Today we have this activity. We're going to be talking about these subjects.
Oh, that's cool. So you guys have like a little following. You guys
Yeah,
have a whole thing going
we
on.
always have people come back every week.
How long have you been coming to the school?
We have been coming here before I was hired a year back ago, but it's really grown and expanded.
Okay.
We have been coming back every Tuesday since August. Yeah, since August when school started.
Wow.
We also go to the continuation school every Friday, and I also have people that always come back. So we've been here for quite a while, and we like kind of make a small connection with the kids that come back, and yeah, so it's really cool.
Is there any next step with the kids that, like you, become your regulars?
The hope is that they're talking to to their friends and making it easier to talk to their friends.
Okay.
So maybe when they come here, they learn that it's okay that if they need to talk to somebody, that they do. And maybe that person's just their friend. And
Again, that's the voice of Kristen Dolan. She's the head of the program.
maybe they want to know how to start the conversation. There's been numerous kids who like either they'll be like, oh, well, I'm homeless, I could use Safe House, or I wanted to commit suicide in the past, like I felt like that, and we know some other kid will go like, yeah, me too, and now they've made a connection.
Okay.
So the more of those connections we create, both between staff and peers, and peer-to-peer out here, the easier it is for them to then go and use the services that are in our area.
Hey.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Good.
Good.
So I move away from the table so they can actually talk to the kids and their kids. So I didn't want to record them because they're minors. They, throughout the lunch period, are there playing the game, having them roll the dice. The kids are giving them high fives, giving them hugs, taking candy. And then I debrief. I ask them what they thought about their 30 minutes or so on this campus this time around.
Kristen Kelly Dolan, the peer-to-peer coordinator for the Cup of Happy program at Safe House of the Desert in Thousand Palms, California.
My name is Lene Diaz, and I'm a peer specialist 2 at Operation Safe House, and I work for Cup of Happy.
Julio Murillo, peer youth specialist 1 for Cup of Happy.
So guys, you guys just did the first lunch. What'd you think? How'd it go?
I'm seeing a lot more return students. Initially, at the beginning of the year, it's always hard to get people to come to the table, and now to see that kids are coming back and high-fiving staff and wanting to interact more, it shows we're creating a positive change.
It went really good. This is, like Kristen said about average, how many students we get. We get a lot of returns, but today was really good because we got new people to our table, and that just helps them, or us expand our audience.
How'd it go?
Pretty good. I mean, some of the students that actually went here actually stayed for a bit to do more part of the game, not just a little quick game. They actually stayed to participate more.
Now, it seemed to sort of build. At first, you had a couple of kids before the bell rang, and then once the bell rang and everybody poured out of their classrooms, people started coming up, and even if they didn't sign up, they would just come over just to say hi. Are you like buds now?
We don't like to call them our friends. We're their peers, and we're here to help them through any tough transitions in their life. It's a great feeling to build a connection with these teens. Sometimes that we are really their only support. Sometimes they can't find support at home or with their friends, and they like to hang out with us. They like to talk with us and chat for a while, just see how their day's going and make them feel safe here, which is our main priority, really, to have a positive outlet for them to go to.
You think it's making a difference?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Do you?
Yes, because, I mean, you can see them coming back. I mean, if they were really interested, they wouldn't be showing up, even if it was just candy. Like, you can see that they come here because they know that we care about them, that we would hear them out without any judgment. My goal is, to help those who really don't have a voice or are too afraid to speak up. about mental health. Be their voice, help them out, show them that it's okay to be going through problems. It's just part of life, and that they can actually go get that help and resources.
One reason why I like this job is because when I graduated from high school, mind you, it wasn't that long ago, I wish there was a program like this where I can go to when I was going through breakups and with my mom and my family going crazy, and I wish I had someone to talk to. So that's why I think this program is great.
Has there ever come a point where a kid will come up to you and you'll think, oh, this is getting a little bit too much for me, I need to do something different, or I'm not really prepared to handle this?
Not a whole lot. Not a whole lot at lunch activities such as these. But when we do more intimate groups in a closed setting, where there's not people walking back and forth and it's just us, there has been times where it did get a little intense and a little heavy, but nothing that we couldn't handle.
The training kicked in?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, there's times where, topics will get really heated, but, we found ways to just try to calm it and bring it back to a more positive mood.
If someone does come out and say that they're depressed and have considered suicide or suicidal thoughts, we are trained in that, and I think that's one of the best trainings that I have ever gotten personally.
Do you get, have you gotten any sort of, I learned something kind of feedback from any of these kids?
Sometimes we don't even ask how their week went. They'll just tell us, yeah, it went really well, I did this. So it kind of shows, how confident they are in us.
We actually have feedback sheets that we hand out in, like I said, the more smaller groups. And they'll write comments or suggestions and say, I was really shy when I came into this, but then I felt like I can open up. And we love those type of feedbacks. They're fantastic.
What's up with the color? I mean, I know this lime green, it's blinding. It's so, and it's a really bright day out here.
It makes it really easy for people to see, and it's a conversation piece. Like, we walk around with shirts that have cups smiling on it, and people say, what does that mean? Like, what is that about? And it gives us an introduction and like an opening to say, hey, this is what we do, and this is, this could be good for you.
And then back to Kristen Dolan to sum it up and put a cap on why what they do works and what's next. Can you just give an overview of the idea of stigma as it relates to kids? Is it useful even to think about stigma differently when we're thinking about young people, high schoolers, middle schoolers, as opposed to adults?
I don't think so. I think that stigma for youth is the same for adults. It's that feeling that somebody's going to judge you because of something you're going through, or think that you're weak because you need help. And I think that the only difference in thinking about it with youth is that the hope is that we can reduce that stigma so that they become adults who have a reduction in stigma, who then maybe have children who don't have a fear of stigma. That would be the goal.
Just give us a quick overview of Cup of Happy.
It's designed to reach K-age youth, and that's transitional aged youth who are 16 to 25. And the goal is to reduce stigma. So in going out to schools or organizations like Boys and Girls Clubs, my staff meets with youth and discusses mental health, and that if you need someone to talk to, it's okay. And we do that by playing different games, making things relatable. We're also rolling out a new program with Speakers Bureau where staff that have undergone their own mental health issues talk to their peers about what that's like, and the fact that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and that just because you have a mental health diagnosis doesn't mean you are that diagnosis. Getting that point across that it's just a small part of who you are, and if you need help, that's okay.
So are kids more accessible, amenable to these concepts of you are not your illness, everybody has problems, and it's okay?
It's really, initially it's hard to get across because it's a very old idea for the medical profession. Like, nobody says that they are diabetes or that they are cancer. They say they have it. But to say that I have bipolar or I have schizophrenia is very different, because most people will say I am those things. And so it becomes a feeling for them that there's something internally broken within them. Not that there's something happening to them, but that it is them. And so it's been slightly difficult to get that turnaround of thinking, but it seems to be easier with kids and youth rather than adults who are very set in the fact that, this is what's going on and this is what they grew up with. So to reach the kids, it's harder initially to get them to feel that, but we're slowly starting to see the change.
Have you gotten feedback from parents about some of the kids that you've worked with?
We haven't gotten a lot of feedback from parents, mainly because we don't really work with them. So when we see the kids, it's in a school environment. It's away from where their parents would normally be. But one of the things that I would imagine is that it might be easier for them to approach the conversations of mental health with their parents because of the fact that they've come to our groups.
And what do the kids themselves tell you? And before actually you talk about that, describe what that interaction is like. There's this table, and it's got the most amazingly bright lime green cover that I've ever seen. I didn't know they made a cover that bright. And it gets a lot of attention, and your staff are wearing similarly colored T-shirts.
Yes, we're very bright and hard to miss when we go out, which is kind of our point. We want people, when they see us with our bright lime green shirts that has a ginormous cup on it that's smiling at you, to be intrigued and say, what are you guys doing? What is this? It makes it very easy for us to then go, oh, well, we're helping to talk about mental health and mental health challenges, like what stresses you out. And so we start the conversation a lot of times just because of the fact that we're present and extremely bright and hard to miss. And the interactions with the kids, initially, they can be a little hesitant. I know that one of the interactions I've seen is that kids worry that just because they're seen talking to us that maybe someone thinks they're suicidal or there's something wrong with them. And it's a very interesting dynamic that you find in high schools where it's almost that you can very much see the stigma right up front. But once they come back to our table and see us there numerous times, it becomes easier to know who we are, and you'll actually hear kids yell, "Hey, cup of happy," across the campus because they know why we're there and they're happy to see us.
Now, talk about for a moment the interactions that I saw. Your two staff persons, it's a standard 6 foot, 5 foot table with the banner about Cup of Happy with this bright green tablecloth. Your staff are in these bright green shirts. They're college age, so they look like they very well could be high schoolers, so they fit in very well. Kids are coming up to them like, hey, what's going on? Giving them hugs and high-fiving them like they're buddies now. Like there's something there, at least maybe buddies is the wrong word, that they're very comfortable with, that they've sort of accepted them into the high school environment. Would that be more accurate?
Yeah, they really start to, my peer specialists, they build a rapport with their peers because they're there for support. They're there to listen. And sometimes, their peers aren't getting that anywhere else. Even sometimes when you're talking to your friend, they're busy texting or they've got their own stuff going on. And my staff is there specifically to support other peers. So it's fun to see them. And we don't necessarily refer to, the people that we meet as like friends or buddies, but you get that feel with it because you've built a rapport with somebody that you've probably shared some pretty deep stuff with about what's going on for you in your life, and you've built trust. And when that happens, you do start to see that camaraderie.
And that's got to make it easier to talk about the substantive nitty-gritty kinds of issues like depression or suicidal thoughts or drug abuse or fill in the blank.
Absolutely. And the fact that it is a peer-run program is so helpful because it's not some adult walking in and saying, hey, I know what's wrong with you. This is what you need to do instead. It's one of your peers going, dude, I know what you're going through. Like, that stuff's tough. Let me give you some things that you can do. Like, let me put some tools in your tool belt that I have that would be really cool for you to have as well.
Now, what's the advantage, or is there one, of having the peer youth specialist at the table, out there during lunchtime? Kids are milling around. They're coming and going. A lot of kids are stopping by. And even those that aren't actually stopping are looking and checking you guys out. as opposed to, and compare that with a more standard school approach, having it part of, I don't know, health class or science class or a group assembly?
I think that after a rapport is built with the youth, that groups end up working really well. So if you were going to take it to a health class or anything else, I think it would eventually work. But I think our approach at the moment works really well at a lunch table is because there's no commitment. We're not saying, sit down, open your book, you need to do this. We're saying, hey, we have candy and we have some mental health activities that you can do, and we're going to be here if you're going through some stuff. If you're the kid that feels like you're weird or that you don't fit in, like, you're always welcome at our table, and we'll probably help other people make you welcome at theirs because they realize that there's nothing wrong with you. Like, you're just living your life and being you. So our approach is a very casual one initially. We do hold groups in different places where it's a little more closed room, talking it out kind of things. But our lunch table activities are some casual encounters where you get to almost sprinkle that like stigma reduction dust on everyone and in a non-threatening way.
Now, because of confidentiality, because these are minors, they're high school kids, I wasn't doing any recording of the conversations that your peer specialists were having with the high schoolers. But when I was sitting there along with you and we were just speaking casually, at least I didn't think I ever heard the term mental health used. It was more of, this is stuff you can do, what's going on with you, and what do you think about just different sorts of experiences?
Yeah, we try not to make it very clinical because as soon as you start sounding like you know everything, it's a turnoff to a lot of people, and I think that anyone can connect with that. But yeah, we make it very much a fun conversational approach. So we definitely don't diagnose, and we might not come right out and say, like, this is for your mental health awareness. But we'll definitely say, hey, are there something stressing you out in school? Let's talk about that. Let's figure out what we can do differently. I'm Kristen Dolan, the peer-to-peer coordinator for the Cup of Happy program at Steakhouse of the Desert.
Fantastic. Kristen Dolan, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you.
Well, thank you.
And along with Kristen Dolan, who's the administrator of the Cup of Happy program, we also heard from Lene Diaz and Julio Murillo. Also, special thanks to Tamar Brandeis of Operation Safe House. Thank you to my guest at the top of the show, Juliet Saleh, and special thanks to NPR News for the use of their material. That's the show. Until next week, for Mindset, mental health news, and information, I'm your host, James Curtis. Dare to see mental health differently, because when we understand why we do what we do, we can do better.
It's a good topic to talk about. It's very prevalent, but people are a bit sort of afraid to talk about it, I guess. So I hope it goes well and you keep getting more listeners.
That's cool. All right. So, when are you guys going to incorporate like the spider zombie part of the orange? I'm just kidding. Anyway.
I do believe that'll be handled by someone else. And if it's handled by me, the answer is no.